I stood in the doorway of my study, watching my daughter-in-law Jennifer rifle through the filing cabinet like she owned the place. She didn't even notice me at first, too focused on pulling out folders and photographing documents with her phone. "Looking for something?" I asked. She jumped, clutching a folder to her chest. "Oh, Robert, you startled me. I was just— Your son asked me to find the insurance paperwork for the estate settlement. The funeral was 4 days ago, Jennifer." I know. She set the folder down, smoothing her blazer. "But these things take time to process. And David thought we should get ahead of it. You understand." I understood perfectly. I'd buried my wife Patricia 6 days ago in Vancouver, and already my son and his wife were circling like vultures. Patricia and I had been married for 43 years. 43 years of building a life together in our Kitsilano home, raising David, watching the neighborhood change around us. The house we'd bought for $85,000 in 1982 was now worth close to $3 million, and everyone knew it. "The insurance information is with the lawyer," I said. "You didn't need to go through my files." "Right, of course." Jennifer edged past me toward the door. I'll let David know." After she left, I sat down at Patricia's desk. This had been her space, where she'd managed the finances, planned our trips, kept everything organized. I could still smell her perfume in the fabric of the chair. The grief hit me in waves. Sometimes I'd forget for a moment that she was gone, and then I'd remember, and the loss would crash over me again. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Dad, we need to talk. Coming over tonight with Jen. Important." I knew what this was about. It had started at the reception after the funeral, when I'd overheard Jennifer whispering to David about timing and market conditions. When David had casually mentioned that his firm was looking at investment properties, and wouldn't it be interesting if something opened up in Kits. That evening, they arrived with a folder of their own. David hugged me, brief, awkward, and they settled on the couch while I made tea. Patricia had always made the tea. I nearly put out 4 cups before I caught myself. "Dad," David began, "we want to talk about your future." "My future?" "You're 68 years old, living alone in a house, with 3 floors and stairs. You can barely manage." "I manage fine." "Dad, be realistic." Jennifer leaned forward. "This place is too much for one person. The maintenance alone, when was the last time you cleaned the gutters? Changed the furnace filter? And what about snow removal in winter? I've been handling this house for over 40 years. With Mom," David said quietly. "But she's not here anymore." The words hung in the air. Not here anymore. As if she'd just stepped out for groceries. "We've been researching retirement communities," Jennifer continued, pulling out brochures. Glossy photos of smiling seniors playing cards, doing yoga, eating in bright dining rooms. "There's a wonderful place in Burnaby, full service, activities, medical staff on site. You'd have friends your own age, no property worries, no isolation." "I'm not isolated. I have the neighborhood, the community center." "Dad." David's voice had that edge I recognized from his teenage years, when he thought he knew better than everyone else. "We're trying to help you. This house is worth nearly $3 million. You're sitting on a fortune while living like— well, it's not necessary. You could sell, move somewhere manageable, and actually enjoy your retirement." "I am enjoying my retirement." "Are you?" Jennifer asked. "Or are you just going through the motions, maintaining a house that's full of memories but not much else?" I wanted to tell them that the memories were exactly what I needed, that Patricia's garden still bloomed every spring, that our bedroom still smelled like her lavender sachets, that I could walk through these rooms and feel her presence in every corner. But they wouldn't understand. They'd never understood what this house meant to us. "I'm not selling," I said. David and Jennifer exchanged a look. "We're not asking you to decide tonight," David said. "Just think about it. Really think about it. Because, Dad, at some point we're going to need to have a serious conversation about your capabilities, and whether what? Whether I'm competent to make my own decisions?" "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" They left shortly after, tension crackling in the air. I watched from the window as they sat in their car for 10 minutes, clearly arguing. Jennifer was gesturing emphatically. David was rubbing his temples. I went back to Patricia's desk and pulled out the bottom drawer, the one with the false bottom she'd installed herself 5 years ago. Inside was a manila envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. She'd shown it to me 2 weeks before she died. "When they start circling," she'd said, her voice weak but her eyes still sharp, Remember that I saw them clearly. I always have. Inside the envelope were several documents. A deed to a property in Tofino, Vancouver Island. A letter from Patricia explaining everything. Bank statements showing regular transfers over the past 15 years, small amounts, carefully managed, building to something substantial. And a will, properly witnessed and notarized, that superseded the one David knew about. Patricia had bought the Tofino property in 2009, during the recession, when prices were low. A small oceanfront lot with a cottage that needed work. Over the years, she'd quietly renovated it, using money from her inheritance when her parents died. Money David didn't know about because it had never gone through our joint accounts. She'd created something beautiful. A 2-bedroom cedar cottage with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Pacific, a wraparound deck, a small workshop. I saw how they looked at this house, after your retirement party, her letter said. How Jennifer calculated square footage while pretending to admire the crown molding. How David started talking about downsizing like it was his idea, his concern. They don't see you, Robert. They see equity. They don't see us, they see real estate. So I built us an escape route. Somewhere they don't know about. Somewhere you can breathe after I'm gone. The cottage is yours. The Kit Solano house is yours too. Don't let them bully you into anything. But if you need to leave, if the pressure gets too much, you have somewhere to go. You've always loved Tofino. Remember our anniversary weekends there? I want you to have that peace. And when the time comes, leave this house to Daniel. He's the only one who's ever seen you as a person, not an inheritance. Daniel, my nephew, my younger brother, Michael's son, 24 years old, studying environmental science at UBC. He'd been at the funeral, quiet and respectful, helping serve food at the reception, while David and Jennifer networked with Patricia's wealthy cousins. Daniel had Patricia's old gardening books. She'd given them to him when he'd expressed interest in urban agriculture. He'd actually read them, actually applied the principles to a community garden project he was running. The visits from David and Jennifer intensified over the next 2 weeks. They'd drop by unannounced to check on me, they said, but I'd catch Jennifer photographing rooms, David measuring spaces with his phone. They brought more brochures, more statistics about seniors living alone, more concerned expressions that didn't reach their eyes. We've talked to a realtor, David announced one evening. Just preliminary discussions. The market is strong right now. We could potentially get 3.2 million, maybe more with the right staging. We? I asked. You. You could get that much, obviously. I haven't agreed to sell. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. Grief does that. It clouds judgment. That's why there are professionals. People who can help make rational decisions during emotional times. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Are you? Jennifer pulled out her tablet. Because we've noticed some things. You forgot to pay the gas bill last month. There were expired groceries in the fridge. You wore the same shirt 3 days in a row last week. I was in mourning. Or you're declining, David said. Dad, we love you. We want what's best for you. And what's best is a controlled environment where you're safe, where someone else handles the responsibilities, where you can get your hands on $3 million. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but they were true. David's face flushed red. That's not fair, isn't it? You've been here every other day since your mother died, and not once have you asked how I'm doing. Not really. You ask about bills and maintenance and property taxes, but you haven't asked about me. Because you won't be honest about your struggles. Jennifer stood up. You keep pretending everything's fine when it clearly isn't. This house is falling apart. This house is not falling apart. The back fence is rotting. The deck needs restaining. The roof has moss growing on it. These are facts, Robert. These are minor maintenance issues that I can handle. Can you? Can you really? David stood too, and suddenly I was surrounded. At your age, with your health, Mom handled everything, and now she's gone. You need help, whether you admit it or not. I thought about Patricia's letter, about Tofino, about the fact that I hadn't told them yet because some part of me kept hoping they'd prove her wrong, that they'd show actual concern, actual love, instead of this calculated campaign to separate me from my home. I need you to leave, I said quietly. Dad. Now, please. They left, but Jennifer paused at the door. We're filing for a competency evaluation. We've already talked to a lawyer. You're not capable of managing your affairs. And someone needs to step in before you hurt yourself, or lose everything Mom worked for. After they left, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. Patricia's reading chair was still angled toward the window, her bookmarks still in the novel she'd never finish. 43 years. 43 years of building a life, and it had taken David less than a week to try to dismantle it. I called my lawyer the next morning. Margaret Chen had handled our estate planning for 20 years. She'd been at the funeral, had pressed my hand and said, "Call me when you're ready." "I'm ready," I told her. In her office, she laid out Patricia's documents. "Your wife was very thorough," she said. "She updated this will 3 months before she died. Everything is airtight. The Tofino property is solely in your name. Patricia used her inheritance to purchase it, so it's separate from marital assets. David has no claim to it. Can he really file for a competency evaluation? He can try, but you'd need to be evaluated by professionals. And frankly, Robert, you're one of the most competent 70-year-olds I know. You're grieving, not incompetent. There's a difference." He found out about my missed gas bill. "Did you pay it when you realized?" "The next day." "Then you're managing your affairs. One missed bill during acute grief doesn't indicate incompetence. It indicates being human." She pulled out another document. Patricia also left instructions about the Kitsilano house. Her recommendation, and this is just a recommendation, the final decision is yours, is that you will it to your nephew Daniel upon your death. She felt he would appreciate it for the right reasons. She wrote that? She wrote that Daniel sees houses as homes, not investments. She thought that mattered. I thought about Daniel planting tomatoes in the community garden, teaching kids about composting, about David calculating square footage. What do I need to do? Margaret walked me through everything. The Tofino cottage was ready. Patricia had even arranged for a property manager to maintain it while it sat empty. I could move immediately if I wanted. The Kitsilano house could be rented out, managed professionally, generating income. Or I could keep it, visit occasionally, maintain it for as long as I chose. Or I could sell it myself, on my own timeline, and keep every penny. "The point," Margaret said, "is that you have options." Patricia made sure of that. She didn't want you to feel trapped. I drove out to Tofino that weekend without telling anyone. The 6-hour drive gave me time to think, to process, to remember. Patricia and I had celebrated our anniversary there 3 times. The last time was 5 years ago, before her diagnosis. We'd walked on the beach at sunset, collected sea glass, talked about retiring there someday. The cottage was exactly as Patricia had described it. Cedar shingles weathered to silver, large windows framing the ocean view, a stone fireplace, built-in bookshelves already filled with our favorite books that she must have transported gradually over the years. The workshop behind the cottage had woodworking tools. Patricia knew I'd always wanted to try woodworking but never had space in the city. I stood on the deck and watched the waves crash against the rocks. The air smelled like salt and cedar. A bald eagle circled overhead. And for the first time since Patricia died, I felt something other than grief. I felt possibility. I spent the night there, sleeping better than I had in weeks. In the morning, I called the property manager. Patricia had hired a local woman named Sarah, who'd been maintaining the cottage for 2 years. "Patricia told me you might come eventually," Sarah said. "She wanted everything ready for you." How often did she visit? Every few months. She'd spend a weekend, work on the garden, stock the pantry. She said it was her meditation, preparing a space for peace. My wife had spent the last years of her life building me a sanctuary, knowing I'd need it. The weight of that love was almost unbearable. I drove back to Vancouver on Sunday evening. Monday morning, David and Jennifer showed up at 7 a.m., using the spare key I'd forgotten they had. "We need to talk," David said, brushing past me into the kitchen. "We've made appointments with 2 senior living facilities for tomorrow. You're going to tour them, see what's available." "No, Dad, this isn't optional anymore. We've talked to Uncle Michael, Aunt Susan, even the neighbors. Everyone agrees you can't keep living like this." "You discussed me with the neighbors?" Mrs. Patterson said, "Your lawn hasn't been mowed in 3 weeks. That's not like you." "Patricia always mowed the lawn. I haven't. I've been figuring out the mower." "Exactly," Jennifer jumped in. "These little things pile up. Next it'll be the bills again. Then maybe you'll forget the stove on, or fall down the stairs. I'm not moving to a facility." "Then where will you go?" David demanded. "You can't stay here. You've proven that." I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way? And Patricia and I had just made excuses, smoothed things over, pretended his self-centeredness was ambition, his coldness was practicality. "I'm moving to Tofino," I said. Silence. "What? Your mother and I bought a cottage there. Years ago. I'm moving there." David's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, calculation. "You bought property without telling me?" "It wasn't your business to tell. I'm your son. I'm your financial power of attorney." "No, you're not. Your mother was, and she never designated you as successor. Margaret Chen is handling my affairs if I become incapacitated, which I'm not." "This is insane." Jennifer pulled out her phone. "How much did this cottage cost? Where did the money come from? Because if it came from joint assets, it came from Patricia's inheritance from her parents. Separate property, none of your concern." "Everything is our concern when you're making irrational decisions." David was shouting now. "You can't just move to Tofino. You don't know anyone there? You'd be isolated? What if something happens?" "Then something happens. I'm 68, not 98. I'm fully capable of living independently." "For how long?" Jennifer asked coldly. "A year? 2? Then what? You fall and lie there for days because there's no one to check on you? I'd rather fall alone in a place I chose than waste away in a facility you chose for me." David ran his hands through his hair. Okay, fine. Move to Tofino. But sell this house. You don't need both properties, and the money from this place could fund excellent care for decades. The money from this place is mine to do with as I please. And what about my inheritance? The words burst out of David like he'd been holding them back. What about what Mom and I worked for all these years? There it was. Finally, the truth. "Your mother and I worked for a life together," I said quietly. "We didn't work to fund your real estate portfolio." "That's not—" I didn't mean David was backtracking, but the damage was done. "I think you both should leave now." "Dad, leave, and give me your spare key." Jennifer's face hardened. "Fine. But don't expect us to come running when you need help. Don't expect us to pick up the pieces when this little fantasy falls apart." "I won't." After they left, I sat at Patricia's desk and cried, not just for her loss, but for the loss of the son I'd thought I had, the son I'd imagined would care about me, not just my assets. Maybe he'd never been that son. Maybe I'd just been looking through the rose-colored glasses of a father's love. I called Daniel that evening. "Uncle Robert?" He sounded concerned. "Is everything okay? I need to ask you something. Would you be interested in this house? Not now, eventually. When I'm gone." Silence. Then, "What?" "Your Aunt Patricia thought you should have it. The Kitsilano house. She put it in her will, it goes to you. But I wanted to talk to you first. Make sure that's something you'd actually want." "Uncle Robert, I can't accept that. It's worth millions." "Which is exactly why I want it to go to someone who won't just see the dollar signs. Patricia thought you'd appreciate it as a home. Was she right?" Another pause. "I've always loved that house. When I was a kid and we'd visit, I thought it was the most beautiful place in the world. The garden, the built-in bookshelves, the window seat in the upstairs hallway. Aunt Patricia taught me to garden in that backyard." "I know," she remembered. "But what about David? He's your son." "David has made his priorities clear. And they don't include me, except as a means to an end." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry. That must hurt." It did. God, it did. But hearing Daniel's genuine sympathy helped. "There's a condition," I said. "You have to maintain the garden. Patricia's roses, her herb boxes, everything. Can you do that?" "I'd be honored." Over the next month, I prepared for the move. I hired movers, sorted through 43 years of belongings, deciding what to take and what to leave for Daniel. Patricia's clothes went to charity, except for one sweater I couldn't part with yet. Photo albums came with me. Kitchen equipment divided, half for Tofino, half for Daniel. David and Jennifer didn't call, not once. I saw them drive by the house twice, slowing down to look, but they never stopped. The neighbors, though they surprised me. Mrs. Patterson came over with casseroles and helped me pack. "I never said you couldn't manage," she told me. "Your son twisted my words. I said you seemed sad. That's different from incompetent." The Johnsons next door offered to help maintain the house while it was rented. "Patricia was a good neighbor," Mr. Johnson said. She'd want us to look after the place. Margaret Chen drew up rental agreements, found a property management company, established automatic bill payments. Everything Patricia had been handling, now systematized and simple. "You're going to be fine," Margaret said at our final meeting. More than fine. Patricia made sure of it. I moved to Tofino on a Tuesday in May. Sarah had stocked the fridge, put fresh flowers on the table, started a fire in the fireplace. The cottage smelled like cedar and wood smoke and possibility. That first night, I sat on the deck with a glass of Patricia's favorite wine and watched the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and pink. The waves crashed rhythmically. An otter surfaced near the rocks, floating on its back. "You were right," I said out loud, talking to Patricia like I'd been doing since she died. "You saw them clearly. You saw everything clearly. The thing about grief, I was learning, is that it doesn't disappear, but it can transform. It can exist alongside other things, peace, relief, even joy." I missed Patricia with an ache that would probably never fully heal. But here, in the space she'd created for me, I could miss her without the additional burden of betrayal, pressure, manipulation. I started woodworking in the shop, built a simple bookshelf first, then a bench, then more ambitious projects, joined a local community group that maintained beach access points, made friends with other retirees who'd chosen Tofino for its beauty, not because their children had pushed them there. Daniel visited once a month, bringing updates about the Kitsilano house and the garden. He'd moved into the basement suite with my permission and was maintaining everything beautifully. He'd started a neighborhood plant exchange program using Patricia's garden as the hub. "People love it," he said during one visit. "Mrs. Patterson donated her extra tulip bulbs. The Johnsons contributed bamboo starts. It's become this whole community thing." Patricia would have loved that. 6 months after I moved, David called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Dad," his voice was strained. We need to talk." "About what?" "About everything. About how I handled things after Mom died. Jennifer and I, we're getting divorced." I didn't know what to say to that. She was pushing a lot of the aggressive stuff. About the house, the facilities. I went along with it, and I shouldn't have. But it wasn't all her. "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. Can I visit? See the cottage? I'd like to. I'd like to apologize properly. In person." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect the peace I'd found, but he was still my son, and Patricia, for all her clear-eyed assessment of David's flaws, had loved him. "You can visit," I said, "but David? I'm not changing my will. Daniel gets the Kitsilano house. That's decided. I know, I deserve that. I want to try to be a better son, if you'll let me." He visited 2 weeks later. We walked on the beach, ate the salmon I'd grilled, sat on the deck, and really talked for the first time in years. I didn't forgive him completely. That would take time, if it happened at all. But I saw genuine remorse. I saw a man trying to understand how he'd become someone he didn't like. "Mom knew, didn't she?" he asked. "That I'd react badly to her death?" "She knew you'd see inheritance before you saw me." "Yes." He flinched, but didn't argue. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For not asking how you were doing. For treating you like a problem to solve instead of a person who was grieving. Why did you do it?" He was quiet for a long time. Jennifer had expectations. About our lifestyle, our future. And I'd built my whole identity around being successful, being the guy who made smart investments, who saw opportunities. When I looked at that house after Mom died, I saw, no, opportunity. And that's shameful. I'm ashamed. You should be. I am. And I know I can't undo it. But I want to do better. I've started therapy. I'm trying to understand why I am the way I am. I didn't know if he'd follow through. People often make promises in moments of guilt that fade when the guilt does. But it was a start. A year after Patricia's death, I scattered her ashes from the Tofino cottage deck, watching them drift out over the ocean she'd loved. Daniel was there. David was there too, quieter now, more thoughtful. Sarah came, and Mrs. Patterson made the trip from Vancouver, and a dozen new friends from Tofino. "To Patricia," I said, raising a glass of her favorite wine, "who saw clearly, loved deeply, and made sure the people who mattered were taken care of." "To Patricia," everyone echoed. Later, after everyone had left, I sat in Patricia's favorite chair, I'd brought it from Vancouver, and opened the last letter she'd written me. Margaret had given it to me that morning, with instructions to read it on the anniversary of her death. "My darling Robert," it began, "if you're reading this in Tofino, then you made the choice I hoped you'd make. The choice for peace over pressure, for autonomy over obligation. I'm proud of you. I know it wasn't easy, nothing about this year has been easy, but I hope you've found some measure of happiness in this place. I hope you've discovered that life doesn't end at 68 or 70 or 80. It just changes, and change can be beautiful if we let it. You taught me that when we moved to Kitsilano all those years ago, when I was scared and you were brave. Now I'm returning the favor, giving you permission to be brave again. Whatever happens with David, remember, you can't control other people's choices, only your own. You chose to honor yourself, your needs, your right to live life on your terms. That's not selfish, that's healthy. Keep choosing yourself, my love. Keep building, creating, exploring, and know that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I'm proud of the man you've always been. Love always, Patricia." I sat there as the sun set, tears running down my face, the letter trembling in my hands. She was gone. She would always be gone. But she'd given me something precious, the foundation to build a life after her. Not the life David wanted for me, not the life society expected. My own life, on my own terms. That night, I started writing. Not for publication, but for Daniel, for any future grandchildren David might have, for anyone who might one day need to hear this story. I wrote about love and loss, about family and betrayal, about the difference between being a parent and being a doormat. I wrote about Patricia's wisdom, her foresight, her fierce protection of my right to choose. I wrote about the lessons I'd learned, that grief doesn't make you incompetent, that getting older doesn't mean surrendering autonomy, that children aren't entitled to their parents' assets just because they're children, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who treat you like a problem rather than a person. I wrote about what I wished I'd known earlier, that it's okay to have boundaries with your children, that loving them doesn't mean letting them run your life, that you can honor a lifetime of parenting while still insisting on respect, that saying no to pressure doesn't make you difficult, it makes you human. And I wrote about what happens after the beautiful, unexpected things that can emerge when you choose yourself, the friendships I made in Tofino, the peace I found in woodworking, the satisfaction of maintaining a home I actually chose, not one I was pressured to keep or sell, the relationship slowly rebuilding with David, based now on honesty rather than assumptions. The story doesn't have a neat ending, because life doesn't work that way. David and I still have complicated conversations. Some days are harder than others. I still miss Patricia with an intensity that takes my breath away. But I also have days where I laugh, where I create something beautiful, where I sit on my deck and feel genuinely grateful to be alive. That's what Patricia gave me, in the end. Not just a cottage or financial security. She gave me permission to grieve, to struggle, to eventually thrive. She gave me the tools to protect myself when I was most vulnerable. She gave me a future when everything felt like it was ending. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, children pressuring you about your home, your finances, your choices, remember this. You don't owe anyone your autonomy. You don't have to make major life decisions while you're grieving. You don't have to justify keeping your home, or selling it, or moving across the country. Your life is yours to live. And the people who truly love you will respect that, even if they don't always understand your choices. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if the pressure feels more about their needs than yours, if the concern feels performative rather than genuine, it probably is. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to wait. You're allowed to make decisions at your own pace, in your own time. And if you have a Patricia in your life, someone who sees clearly, who plans ahead, who loves you enough to protect your future even when they won't be there to share it, treasure them, listen to them. Let their wisdom guide you when you're too tired or too sad to see clearly yourself. I'm 70 now. David visits every few months, and our relationship is slowly healing, built on a foundation of honesty that didn't exist before. Daniel sends photos of Patricia's garden every week. It's become a neighborhood treasure, exactly as she would have wanted. The Tofino cottage is filled with furniture I've built, art from local makers, books I've actually had time to read. Some mornings I wake up and can't believe this is my life, that I chose this, chose myself, chose peace. Other mornings I wake up and immediately think of Patricia, wishing she were here to see the sunrise over the ocean, to approve of my latest woodworking project, to laugh at the otter that's taken up residence near our my dock. Both things can be true. Loss and life, grief and growth, missing someone desperately while still building something beautiful from the foundation they left behind. Patricia always said that love is what you do, not what you say. She loved me enough to prepare for my future, to protect me from my own tendency to prioritize everyone else's needs over my own, to give me tools I didn't even know I'd need. That's love. That's legacy. Not money, not property, but the gift of autonomy, of choice, of freedom. Thank you, Patricia, for everything, for 43 years of partnership, for seeing clearly when I couldn't, for loving me enough to let go while still holding me up. I hope I'm making you proud.